So the first year of lifting, I pretty much made no progress in terms of size. I got a little bit stronger. I got a little I got a little bit leaner, but I didn't get any bigger. And my arms still look like noodles pretty much.
Down neuters.
Although they were well defined noodles. So after that first year, I went back to the drawing board and researched and learned as much as I could. I decided to listen to more different voices from different people and kind of take in information from different perspectives. In the fitness industry, there's a lot of contradicting information, and it's hard to find. It's hard to know what is actually going to work, especially when you got all these voices and they all sound so convincing and they all got studies to back up what they're saying. I didn't really make any progress that first year, and it can pretty much I can pretty much break it down into three main reasons why. And basically, I'm going to go over those reasons, and I'm hoping if you're watching this that hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and you won't be like me and waste a whole year of training. I mean, it's not a complete waste. It was a learning experience, but yeah, I missed out on a year that I could have made some gains in terms of size there. In my first year at lifting, I just wasn't consistent. I lacked discipline.
You lack discipline.
I would become motivated for a few weeks, train hard every day. Well, not every day, but whenever I was in the gym, I'd train hard, okay? And then I stopped for a few weeks because I'd become demotivated and I'd give up. And then I get motivated again, get back in the gym, another 3 or 4 weeks, see no gains, give up again, and cycle continues. Building muscle isn't like a video game. You can't just pause the game and then come back and expect to be exactly as you left it. Muscles need a reason to be there. They need a reason to grow. They need a reason not to die off. They need to be constantly trained and used, week after week. If you're sitting on a couch for weeks on end, watching TV, the body thinks, okay, I guess this guy doesn't need us muscles to get bigger or stronger, and they'll get weak and shrivel up unless you give them a reason to grow. When I first lifted, I was too undisciplined to keep training consistently, and the results showed. There were no results. So I had to change my time horizon and think, okay, I can't expect to see any results in a few weeks' time. This is something that's going to have to take months at least before I see any progress. And I just had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to get that gratification that I was looking for anytime soon. And I just have to do it anyway. And I was right. It did take months before I actually noticed any gains in my muscles. In fact, I didn't actually start to notice any visual changes in my body until about 8 or 9 weeks of consistently going to the gym and training hard. That's the first mistake that I made, was just not being consistent enough. The second mistake that I made was it was also kind of related to consistency. It was consistently tracking and eating more calories and protein. In year one, I really didn't understand how important eating more calories is for gaining muscle. I knew that eating more protein was important, and protein was essential for muscle growth, and so I'd eat more protein. But in terms of calories, I just wasn't eating enough to actually gain any weight. I just wasn't in a caloric surplus. And back then, I was doing a lot of kickboxing, a lot of cardio, and I was burning a lot of calories. And and wasn't eating enough to actually add anything extra basically to the body. All the calories were just being used up just to maintain my little 130-pound frame. And in fact, I actually got even thinner the first few months I consistently started training because I was doing even more exercise with the lifting on top of the kickboxing and the cardio while still eating the same amount of food. It wasn't until I finally got into a consistent caloric surplus that's when I that's when I finally started slowly gaining some weight here. I just didn't realize the importance of eating more calories. It wasn't until I actually started tracking how much I was eating, making sure I was eating at least 2 to 300 extra calories on average more than I was eating before, and making sure I got about 0.7 grams to 1 gram of protein per lean pound of body mass. So that's when I really started to see a change and finally started gaining some weight. Finally, the noodles started becoming pythons. So that's number two. So number three was the third thing that I didn't do was not lifting heavy enough and staying away from heavy compound lifts like barbell lifts like squats and bench and deadlift. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The final piece of the puzzle was just lifting heavier. When I first started lifting, all the beginner advice I read was to stick with light weights, focus on good form, and so I did that. But at some point, in order for the muscles to grow, right, you need to continue to introduce novel stimulus. If there's no if there's no progression in the stimulus, if there's no progression in resistance, there's no reason for the muscles to grow. And so finally I realized this and realized that okay, I should try to lift heavier. Like, duh. I mean, you look at all the big bodybuilders, right? Look at the weights they're lifting. They're not lifting light weights. They're I mean, lifting with lighter weights is probably a good idea for you for your first few weeks or even first few months, just so you can get a hang of the movements and the coordination of the muscles. But at some point, if you want to if you want to add some muscle, you got to start loading up the resistance. When you're doing a working set, the weight should be heavy enough that you're not able to pay attention to anything else other than what you're doing. The weight should be so demanding of your focus and attention and require such a level of intensity where you're only able to focus on the rep. If you can do your working sets and still be able to if you're doing your working sets and you're still able to carry on a casual conversation, you're definitely lifting too light. So that was number three, just lifting heavier and focusing on heavy compound lifts, which work the biggest, strongest muscle fibers rather than focusing on light isolation exercises. So those were the three things that I did to finally make my noob gains in the gym. Number one was just consistently work out. Two was eat more. And three was work on actually getting stronger at compound lifts like squats and pull-ups, leg press, bench press, deadlift. Anyway, hope this helps, and I hope you don't make those same mistakes. And I hope you don't go on to waste a year of training because of ignorance.